I'm going to say this is my 5th cup of coffee for the day. That is my conservative estimate. Welcome to Butts Week at Zoe Hong Teaches. We are going to work on back figures this week. This video is going to be all female figures. The next video that I'm going to post in a few days will be male figures. If you are familiar with my 4 steps of croquis building process, then this whole video, a lot of it will be review and it will be fairly easy for you. If you are not familiar with my croquis building process, I would say watch this video, but if you get confused along the way, I would recommend that you go watch the other videos because that will probably clear a lot of things up for you. And I'll drop the link in the info box. I will go over the 4-step process for backs. I will show you the elongation process, but for the most part, drawing backs is very similar to drawing fronts because the outer shapes are the same. You know, my hand, the outside shape of my hand is not different from here to here, right? And so what we're really concentrating on are interior shapes like shoulder blades and butts, backs of knees, things like that. Why is coffee so delicious? To review my 4 steps of croquis building: step 1, tracing the gesture; step 2, building the body, where we flesh out the pose; step 3, adding anatomy, where we start including the muscle shapes and bone points like your clavicle; step 4 is perfecting with pencil, where we go in and we correct any mistakes, watch our symmetry, and then refine our bodies to suit that of our muse and customer. Things we will need today: clear ruler, nice pictures of a back figure, clean unpixelated image of a mostly naked back figure so that we can see the anatomy, tracing paper, and then assortment of mechanical pencils, color mechanical pencils, and erasers. In this video, I'm going to do 2 step 1s. I'm going to do the step 1 for the short, not elongated fashion figure, and then I'm going to do a step 1 for the elongated figure. And then I'm going to do steps 2, 3, and 4 for the elongated figure, because the steps are pretty much the same for the shorter figure as well. Number 1, you have to find your center of gravity. So before, when we were looking at front figures, we were taking the base of our necks, our suprasternal notch, and connecting that spot with the center of our weight distribution in our feet. And the same will hold for the back. So we have the angle of her back. That is the top of her center back, as you can see. And the way she's standing, most of her weight is on this foot, but she has some weight here. And so I've decided her weight center is kind of in between her ankles, but closer to this one. So this is her center of gravity, which is her plumb line. And then I'm going to draw a plumb line on my tracing paper. I have had a request for teaching croquis without using tracing paper. I do have a method of croquis building that doesn't use tracing paper that I like less, especially for beginners, but that is further along the request queue. That'll be coming up in a few months. Just FYI, at this point, the subscriber request queue is over 20 videos long. And again, go ahead, make your requests. I love them. I love your eagerness to learn. Just FYI on how long that request queue is. Because I always go in the order of the request. Okay, no favorites. Nobody gets to jump the queue. I'm very British that way. Okay, I'm not British at all, but you know what I mean. As you know, I like to make tape less sticky by putting some lint on it. Retrace the head. Not just the face, but the whole head. Those of you who are just getting started, I do highly recommend that you start with a reference picture like this one where you can see some of her face and head. If you pick one where all you see is just a mass of hair, that will not help you. Okay? When you're used to drawing croquis and you can kind of guesstimate how big the head is in proportion to her body, that's fine. But those of you who are beginners, try to find a girl with a pixie cut or someone where their face is turned towards the camera. So we have the angle of her shoulders, and that's the center of her neck. So I'm going to estimate that that is her neck, and that's the direction of her neck. That's the top of her shoulder. We're going to mark the center back. Her shoulder blades are right there. Obviously, there are no breasts to mark, but we do have her rib cage in here. And then now we're going to get to my students' favorite thing in the whole wide world, the pelvic box. There's your center back, and you start your pelvic box in between your waist and your crotch, so about here. This first line is going to be at a 90-degree angle from your center back line. You're going to choose the side that's closer to the center back, so here. This space must be the same as this space, so we're marking the back there. We're going to mark two bottoms. We have this bottom, which is parallel to this line at crotch level. That's the bottom of our pelvic box. And then we're going to mark here where that's the part where her butt sticks out the most. And then all of this is side, right? This is the side of her body. And that's the back view of her pelvic box. We're going to mark her knees again. Always the full width of the knee on bone markers. There's the direction of their legs. And then the ankles. I like to mark the Achilles heel so that you kind of know the direction your foot is going. And there is step one of the not elongated fashion figure. So let's do an elongated one. We already have her plumb line. So the first thing we're going to do is measure her head. We're going to do a classic 10 head. And you need to know how long a head is in a 10 head figure. Whenever you measure a head, you measure along the length of the head. So it doesn't matter if the head is this angle, you're always measuring this. You're not measuring it like this, you're measuring it like this. So we're here and we're here. We're at 1 1/8 inches head. We're going to measure off 10 increments of 1 1/8 inches head, 10 increments of 1 1/8 inches. I like to mark the head and the numbers on the back so that no matter how much correcting I'm doing and erasing, I still have an intact number line. Place that one line right on the bottom of her head, right at her chin there. Mark her head. Now, we can't mark her breasts because we can't see them from this angle. So we're going to take the waist to 3. And if you have a hard time figuring out where her waist is, then use her elbows as a guide. There are her elbows there. There's her other elbow. There's her waist. So we're going to mark her shoulders now. We're marking her center back. Now, again, this is the center of her neck, so we can measure that out. There's the angle of her neck. It's a little bit wide, but we can correct that later. And then crotch is at 4 1/4, and we're actually shortening her torso when we do that. And that's okay because a lot of the visual references that we use for figure work will be lingerie and swimwear models. And a lot of the time, longer torsoed women get cast for that kind of work. So if you end up shortening your actual visual swipe figure, that's fine because we're correcting our visual swipe to create idealized proportions. Hello, delicious coffee. There will be a point in the video today where the caffeine will hit me all at once, and I'm going to start sounding like a chipmunk. It's going to be awesome. So 4¼ is right where her crotch is. We're going to continue the center back line. We're going to draw our pelvic box.
There's that first hip angle. There's the bottom of her crotch angle. There's that. That's the other side of the box. That is the side of the box. We know that that is about where she is widest. Here.
The center of your knees are at 6. Always mark your weight leg knee first, or the leg that has most of the weight. And then mark that. Ankles are at 9. Oh my God, you guys, I forgot my wrists and my hands. So ankles are at 9. Always make sure your plumb lines are matched up so that you're not distorting the figure as you're elongating. Some people, they like an elongated figure that's not too elongated. Like they want it long and lean, but not too exaggerated. And sometimes I will do ankles at 8 instead, so that you can see that the figure is elongated by about half a head, but it's not too exaggerated. And a lot of, models out there are about a 9-head figure, so it's not beyond the realm of believability. I like 9-head figures for costume design, for swimwear, where the torso is a larger part of the body in proportion. I also like 9-head figures for younger looks, like juniors, preteen, because long leggy looks tend to be a little bit more elegant, and I don't, when I'm designing for 16-year-olds, I'm not really too worried about elegance. But I'm going to show you the classic 10 head because that is kind of the starting standard. And also it's more difficult to draw super long legs. So I'm going to demo for you guys the difficult one. So again, here are your ankles. There's my Achilles heel. There's my other ankle. I'm going to connect all that. And yeah, I'm going to make her foot a little bit bigger because I made the rest of her so much bigger. And there's step 1 of the elongated figure. Sometimes I like to do every other step with a color pencil so that I can see the differences in all the lines when I have all these layers overlapping. Step 2 is building my body. So I'm going to flesh this one out. Sometimes it gets a little bit long and tricky, so it's okay to use a ruler here. It's pretty much the only time I ever use a ruler for figure work because we really don't have straight lines on our bodies, so I don't like to draw them. But we've just got our little robot going on here, so it's okay. As you get better and more practiced with your croquis building, you will find there's a point where you don't need step 2 anymore. I don't use step 2 anymore, but I found that using step 2 as a guide for building your anatomy figures really helps beginner students. And that's why I teach it. But if you're getting into the groove of things and you're kind of understanding the process, and if you feel you don't need step 2 anymore, that's totally fine. I'm going to keep teaching it because it works for beginners. We have our nice graceful neck, and we have a nice sloping trapezius that feeds into our shoulders. And there is the top of her neck. And sometimes on like super skinny people, you can see your cervical vertebrae through the base of your neck. There are shoulder blades, deltoid. There's the back of her elbow, the curve of your brachio. Not a lot of muscle definition on female models, especially in the arms. There's the back of her elbow again. You'll be amazed at how often I see back view figures with front view hands. You guys, you got to remember back view hands and back view feet. And if you have a hard time drawing them, you got to go practice. You got to go look at some back view hands, draw your roommate's hands, what have you. There's her nice little, her butt. Yeah, you got to draw a nice butt, you guys. These things are important. We're going to draw our muscle shapes. So, number one, we have our gluteus maximus, and it tucks in before it flares out for the hamstring. Hamstrings curve outward, so you do want to see that in any sort of like 3/4 or side view leg. The back of the knee is flat. You do see this H in the back, H for hamstring, and so we're going to see that. If you have a perfectly dead on back view of a leg, you will see that whole H. If you have a side view, you're going to see half that H. So that H is going to be rotating depending on the angle of your leg. You're going to have these bumps in your knees because you don't have a lot of flesh on the top of your kneecaps. So I'm basically following the blue line, just curving it a little bit. Do you see how she has this H happening here? It's almost a side view. And then the front of her knee is pretty sharp because she doesn't have a lot of flesh on the top there. There's the top of her thigh, also curving up, and then the corner of her knee is pretty straight. The back curve of her gastrocnemius is very curvy. In the front, it does have a slight curve. It's not straight, and it doesn't curve back like that. Slight outward curve. Our calves go in and then comes back out for the width of the foot. So we're going out, we're crossing this blue line, and then we're coming back out. Okay, so use your step 2 as a guide to help you. Past the blue line, cutting into the blue line, and then flaring back out. There is the sharp corner of the knee. We're going to dip in a little bit and then come out where we touch the blue line but don't go past it. We taper back in again before we flare out for the foot. So she's kind of sticking her butt out at us, so it's smoothing out this dip that we see here. So I'm following my blue line, but just slightly curving outside of it. Those are the edges of my knee. As you can see here, again, you see like it's a 1/3 angle. You're going to see that front curve of your quad. You're going to see those bumps of the knee. Again, you're going to go past the blue line for your gastrocnemius, crossing it so that we taper in before we flare back out for the ankle. And then again, you're going to have ever so slight curve here, where we touch the blue line but don't go past it, tapering back in. There's your Achilles heel. There's the back of the foot. There's the sole of her foot. And that foot is going into space because it's facing forward. And then step 4. Step 4, I'm going to use another color pencil. I'm going to flip the figure over and to work on any errors. Okay. Now, flipping the figure over, it really helps you look at the figure again. Okay. Number 1, this is like when you and a friend swap essays to proofread. Your eyes, when you're working on something for a long time, your eyes just start glazing over errors. Okay. Once somebody looks at something for a long time, people start assuming that that is the way it's supposed to be. Okay. And so your eye doesn't catch as many errors. When you flip the drawing over, it's almost like looking at a new sketch, and then the errors pop up immediately. Her arms are too short and her legs are too wide, and they're asymmetrical. Like, look, this one is a lot skinnier than this one. I like to flip over the tracing paper and make my corrections in a different color. So I'm going to drop her elbow here. I'm going to drop her wrist here and move her hand down here. I'm going to move her elbow here. And here. Okay. I like her butt and I like her thigh, but I'm going to give her a little bit more butt. I'm going to give her a little bit more back of thigh and a little bit more front of thigh so that this thigh and this thigh are the same size. And then I prefer the slimmer thigh or the slimmer calf. So I'm going to bring this in. Bring this in. So we have the thicker thigh and the slimmer calf, because that's how I want it to look. If your figure is correct, it should look good facing this way and also facing this way. If your figure only looks good going in one direction, there's something wrong with it and you need to address that. And then again, the last bit about step 4 is to think about what kind of customer you have and address the body concerns of that customer. If you're an activewear designer and you like super fit girls, maybe you want to add a little bit more muscle tone and make her less hourglassy. Or, if you have if you're addressing a fit concern, like your design line is really about addressing top heavy women, then maybe you want your Croquis to also look like she has broader shoulders and a bigger rib cage and smaller hips. Okay, so you're going to think about those things and then correct your Croquis. So I'm going to pretend that I want more muscle definition in my customer. So I'm going to give her some more deltoids, more muscle definition here. I'm going to flip her over again to double check my work. I kind of want to make her head a little bit bigger. Yeah, that's better. And there is your back figure. Okay, check back in a few days or hit the subscribe button for an alert on when I'm going to post the male back figure video. If you have a question, always check the info box first. If your answer is not there, drop me a comment below. What else is there? The coffee's hitting me now. I'm starting to talk kind of fast. Oh shit. Anyway, I will see you next time.